Hello and welcome to Hug and the Snug. I'm Jules, newest member of the Life Size Media team. This is my first ever Hug and the Snug. Today I'm joined by David Pearson, Director of Star Renewable Energy. This is Hug and the Snug. Could we have a hug?
Sure.
Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about, can we pump our way to sustainable heat? I'd like to just start off by asking you a little bit about Star Renewable Energy. Could you sum it up in a nutshell?
Okay, it's a specific business unit that's focused on renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
We've been established 2 years now. I was formerly Director of Innovation of the main parent group, which is Star Refrigeration. I was tasked with finding new directions for the business. And we realised, as everybody seems to be talking about sustainability, that energy really was a key market growth area. And we feel we can bring some value to that.
Fantastic. And how relevant is heat energy to us?
Well, it's 50% of the UK's energy consumption. On a European context, the EU imports €1 billion a day of imported fuel, fossil fuels, and half of that is burned for heat. So rather than getting wrapped up in electricity and how we're going to decarbonise our electricity, actually the bigger prize is if we focused on heat, and we've done some pretty good stuff in that already.
Fantastic. So you work in heat pumps?
Yes.
Yeah. So could we just ask, what exactly is a heat pump?
Well, go back to the thinking about how we make heat. We've got a couple of choices. We can either burn things, or we can move lower grade heat to a need in a higher temperature. So, for example, the fridge in your house is cooling on the inside. At the back of the fridge is where that heat is rejected to at a warmer temperature. So if we harness that same refrigeration cycle on a larger scale, we can effectively be delivering quantities of heat that don't require us to have all that heat coming from a chemical reaction of burning a fuel. Okay,
and where are you harnessing the heat from?
A variety of sources. Really anything that we can cool down without damaging it is a good source. So we can harvest heat from data centres. We can harvest heat from industrial refrigeration. But more relevant in the UK context are rivers. The UK is a pretty wet place.
Fantastic, yeah.
There's rivers pretty much everywhere. They never go below 4 degrees. We've got the sea as well. So a variety of choices of heat options.
Fantastic. So you can use rivers to harness this heat. How mainstream is this already, this technology?
Well, it's not a new idea. That's the first thing to say. Heat pumps were first talked about in 1852. Lord Kelvin at a lecture in Glasgow spoke about heat pumps and refrigeration at the same time. Refrigeration took off because there really wasn't much of another choice on how to make stuff cold.
Yeah.
Heat pumps didn't because fossil fuel is much more convenient, quite often cheaper. So it didn't really take off. During the Second World War, there was quite an uptake in Switzerland, where they had a lot of hydroelectricity but limited access to fossil fuels, so heat pumps were quite prevalent there. And later on, with the oil crisis, and Scandinavia in particular picked up the idea of harvesting heat from heat pumps. There have been some significant examples in the UK. Historically, Crystal Palace, for example, was heated with a heat pump that sourced its heat from the River Thames. And there are other examples around. In terms of mainstreaming what's possible, pretty much any building could be heated with a large heat pump, and this is where we bring some of our industrial refrigeration expertise to a market. We're not talking about small heat pumps, the size of a filing cabinet. These are large units sized for very large buildings, and equally so, a critical USP for us is being able to get to higher temperatures. So we've already demonstrated on a very large scale that we can reach 90 degrees, and that means that any building could be heated with a large heat pump if the building's large enough to use a large system.
Yeah. So where have you done any other projects? Where have you reached 90 degrees? Is that everywhere?
There's two main projects where we've done that. The first is in Drammen in Norway.
Yeah.
This is a district heating system where the city were burning fossil fuel and using the heat from that pumped around the city to heat the buildings, and they decided to use a heat pump. We were asked to come up with a design for that. But critically, and a major innovation that we brought to this market is we're not using HCFCs or HFCs, which are both synthetic working fluids, both with some significant global warming potential challenges. So just as carbon dioxide is a global warming potential gas, these synthetic fluids are typically 1,400 times as potent as carbon dioxide. So some really significant carbon footprint issues would have resulted. We use natural working fluids, and these don't have any global warming potential, so we can get the advantages of heat pumps without some of the disadvantages of the technology. So Drammen is a size equivalent of about 6,000 houses. It's for a district heating scheme that exists in the city, which is about 40 kilometres west of Oslo. And they have, for the last 5 years, been getting 85% of their heat from the heat pump.
Wow.
And the heat pump sources the heat from the fjord. So even in Norway, where the temperature gets pretty cold in winter, the fjord has still got enough heat that it can be harvested for heat and delivered. So what they're effectively getting is zero carbon heat. They're getting heat that doesn't have any emissions from combustion, and they're also getting a lower cost versus the cost of burning gas. They're saving 80% of the running cost.
Wow. So is that a long-term cost effective, or how is it cost effective in the short term? Is it?
Well, it takes a few years to break even. The plant itself and the installation is certainly going to last 20 years, and bits of it will last even longer than that, perhaps 40. Excuse me. So they have a long-term view on this. Break-even point probably around about 4 or 5 years, and that's a challenge, because typically that would be seen as being too long. Even for businesses that expect to still be in business in 10 years' time, a 5-year break-even seems an awful long time. So there's certainly some financial challenges in that respect.
So this sounds like, it could be the future of heating. Where do you see the technology going in the next, say, 10 years or so?
I think we will see a couple of different things. The first is very large buildings, Houses of Parliament, for example, is good location next to the Thames. We'll see very large individual buildings doing their individual heat pumps where they can. So any large building next to a river could do that. On an even bigger scale, we'll see clusters of buildings beginning to connect onto a network that's established, with hot water being pumped around a district. So Canary Wharf, for example, you might not just do one heat pump and one building. You might have a cluster of buildings on a network, and that gives some significant economies of scale for that. And taking it to an absolute extreme, there's absolutely no reason that large areas of any city that's adjacent to a river or the coast couldn't have a network installed and deliver that. And we've got one significant advantage, which is we produce chilled water as a byproduct.
Oh, brilliant.
And the world is becoming a much more environmentally conscious place. We're using less electricity for lighting. We're using less fuel in our cars because they're becoming more efficient. But the one utility that's growing in the Western economies is cooling. And so we have to find better ways of doing cooling. And if we can do cooling as a byproduct of doing heating, because really they're just opposite sides of the same penny, then we can perhaps deliver heating for our houses and cooling for the data centres to drive all the mobile phone apps and YouTube and all that sort of fun stuff.
Fantastic. So is there anything that we can do as businesses or individuals to make this it more mainstream?
I think taking a longer perspective, I think, is part of it. I think not being scared of technology that's been well proven elsewhere. We've got 15 projects around Europe that clearly demonstrate this works, and we're not the only people that do heat pumps. We happen to do them slightly warmer and more efficient. That makes it a little bit easier to make it cost effective. But it's a pretty well established technology. What we have to do is realise that when we're heating hot water, for example, for showering and bathing, and we only want it at 60 degrees, and we're heating our rooms and offices and so on to 21 degrees, we don't have to burn things at well over 1,000 degrees. There's easier ways, more cost effective, more sustainable ways of doing that.
Great. That all sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Thanks so much for coming in today, David.
You're welcome.
It's been lovely to meet you. Thanks. Until next time.